Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to episode number 8 of the Mary and Sam Show. We are so excited to be here with you today. We're going to talk about a great topic. It's about kids. One of the things, what I was thinking about was over the weekend when we were discussing what to say, is thinking about my own son, Aris, and how, he's a terrific guy, very intelligent guy. However, what I believed how he should behave and how he was behaving was different, because I wanted him to be perfect and consistently telling him to do this and to do that. And when he didn't perform the way I wanted him to, I used to think there's something either wrong with him or ultimately there's something wrong with me, because I was judging myself. I was wondering how my family's judging me in comparison to the other kids. And ultimately, I was making myself miserable, and I was making Aris pretty miserable. So I think this is an important thing to talk about, Mary, because as parents we have a big role to play in our child's lives. And ultimately, when we don't understand, especially if your kid isn't conforming to the rest of what the society wants, how he should behave. Basically, I wanted him to be a cog in the wheel, all right, and just go and be a worker, when he had his own voice, and I was drowning out his voice for my own selfish reasons, because I thought he had to be this person. And ultimately, my son is a beautiful, beautiful human being. He has a wonderful message, and luckily I'm married to somebody who can tell me that, hey, when you make a mistake, you know what you did and how to ultimately correct that. And for me, it was a big, big learning curve, was trying to understand how do you deal with what society wants and how to let your kid be a kid. And that's what I had to learn myself. What's your thoughts?
My thoughts are that we're all leaders, and how we treat our children will definitely affect their future. And in most societies, the way we treat our children is how that ideology, how we treat our children, how we raise our children, gets passed on from our parents and from their parents. So from generations and generations gets passed on. And the conventional way that most people believe that the right way to treat your kids or raise your kids is to discipline them, because they think that's the best way. Don't get me wrong, I think discipline is something a lot of human beings do lack, and we all need it. But before discipline, there's another step that is so crucial for all parents to understand. It took me a long time to understand that, obviously through the studies I've done and working with people in coaching practice. Mm-hmm. But, I remember when we're 5 sisters, 2 brothers. My mom and dad are alive. And my mom and dad, their style of parenting were very laid back. So they wouldn't tell us a lot. It wasn't like a disciplinarian style of, parenting that you had to do this way or you're going to get punished. From time to time, my mom did, but it wasn't like that kind of a style. Now, I'm the second oldest. So when my sister got married, this was 30 years ago, I felt as the second child in the family had the responsibility to discipline the rest of my siblings. And this was around the time that we just had came to America, and my mom and dad didn't know English very well. So I felt like this sense of responsibility that I had to take care of my siblings. And the only style that I knew from everybody else that I thought it was effective is to get mad, and sometimes I would hit my sisters. One of my sisters, till today, she tells me, remember you used to slap me when I did something wrong? Is because I thought that's effective. Later in life, when I learned that what is effective, effective in such a way that, okay, so when you discipline your children and they say in front of you, when you're doing that, they say, yes, okay, I'll do it, mom and dad. Mm-hmm. But when you turn your face around, they do something differently, then that style of discipline is not really effective. Right. Because we want children to do the right things even when you're not looking. And most importantly, allow them to make mistakes. And most parents really try really hard to avoid that process. Oh, I'm going to make sure my kids are going to be perfect so they don't make the mistakes I made or other people made.
Right.
right? So because we really,
all parents want the best for their children, right? So
intentions are
ultimately,
great.
that's what I wanted for Aris, right? Was for him to have his own family, to be able to take care of them at some point in the future. Ultimately, that's what I want him to do. But, I'm drowning out his voice.
Yes.
And that's what a lot of people do when they try to over-discipline their kids. You're basically drowning out who they are, trying to shut them down.
Yeah.
To conform.
And I think this part of realization for me was really big, because when I got to coach adults, I realized how much of their childhood upbringing and pre-programming from their parents affected them, mostly in a negative way, in their adulthood.
Yeah.
And obviously there's some positive, effects that also plays as well.
Sure.
But mainly I noticed that there was a negative effect, because how they thought about themselves, how they, their self-esteem, their confidence, and they didn't have a voice of their own. What was happiness for them in life, what they want out of life, because you keep repeating what your parents taught you, and which some of the stuff might be great, but what about, some of the stuff that you got pre-programmed that maybe it's not serving you well in your life? Because the intentions, like you said, are good, but some of the intentions you have to be really careful, because most parents, they're in competition. They want their kids to be better than so-and-so's kids.
Yeah, because you're being judged, right? I mean, like myself, I'm judging myself versus my sister's kids, right? And now my brother has kids, so ultimately they're small. We'll have to deal with Arya differently, but we'll see,
And we have 2 kids. Aris, our son, is 15 and a half, and Arya is 2 and a half. And you see that, they're both completely so different.
Yeah.
And what's amazing that most of the time we as parents want to take all the credit when a child is doing really well. And in cases that when the other child is not doing really well, then who are we supposed to blame? It's like if you have
I was
that
blaming myself. Like there's something wrong with me, with my parenting style. Maybe I'm not doing something right. And ultimately I'm just getting mad at myself for not being able to do it. But you know what? I mean, people don't need to conform. Everybody doesn't need to conform.
Yes.
There's people amongst us who will change. There's people like Steve Jobs, right? He has an idea. First, everybody thinks he's crazy. Then suddenly, once the idea takes off and enough people get behind it and there's enough momentum, then he's a genius, right? And that's a really interesting concept, because I keep hearing that over and over. And they say in some circles, it takes the crazy ones to change the world, because they believe so instinctively in doing something that they have their own voice. And God willing, I hope that this message reaches some other parents who have children, who you can let them be who they are versus trying them to be what you want them to be, what you think society wants them to be, which is just another cog in the wheel, another worker out there.
Yeah.
We don't need another worker. We need people with ideas, especially in this day and age. I mean, it seems like all hell is breaking loose.
Well, see, every child is different. Their blueprint, their mindset is different. Their purpose in life is different. So we can't really conform everybody into the same thing, that you should go to school, get a job, have a secure job, get married, which I think everybody wants that. But maybe there's a child you have at home that is different. And that's okay, because maybe what he or she is so different is that there's a purpose, there's a reason.
Right.
Maybe he or she wants to create something. So understanding that will help them support that idea, because I remember I was coaching a couple and they have 2 kids, 2 sons. One is like, our daughter, she's kind of perfect. She knows what to do, what the right thing is. She's just like, you don't have to tell her much what to do.
Right.
She's got it.
She's on autopilot.
Yeah. Or my son is completely the opposite. Very kind of defiant in personality. Mm-hmm. He's not like everybody else. He's very creative, and he's a visionary. So I have the same clients, and then 2 kids, 2 boys are completely different.
Right.
So the boy that is doing everything right, he's disciplined, he wakes up on time, he goes to sleep on time, he does his studies, homework on time. they're fine with that, obviously, because he's not that difficult.
Yeah.
But the one that stays up late and he's got different ideas, he's into music, now the parents are struggling with that because they want him to be just like his brother.
Exactly. We just want little worker bees, like that movie, The Bee. You know, they were born, you had to pick a job right away.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. We're doing that with our kids. Get into something and be that person the rest of your life. Well, guess what? Everybody that's in a job that just got in it to make money, they're completely unhappy. And I know you see this in your career. I had to go through it because I was taught to be, you have to be a doctor. You can only be two things in the Eastern cultures, a doctor or an engineer, right? Nothing else exists. Well, I wanted to be a businessman, right? Well, you couldn't do that. So I went to school going for chemistry and trying to get out of that. By the time when I graduated, I was like, you know what? This is your guys' dream. It's not my dream. I wish I had gone into business earlier. But you know what? It's never too late. So I went back when I was 42, right? And got my master's in what I wanted, which is finance. And finally did what was good for me. And I haven't been happier. And I can't believe I was about to make the same mistake with my kid. Just following, like subconsciously being programmed. You got to be this in order to be that, right?
Yes.
And thank God, Mary, for helping me understand that, because even now I still fall into the trap where I catch myself. Aris doesn't want to do something and I try to either taunt him or I say something, well, how come so-and-so's doing it and you're not doing it, And then I catch myself and I find myself having to apologize to the little guy, saying, you know what, your dad is really trying, but I'm not perfect. I'll fall, I'll keep relapsing into who I was programmed. And now I'm spewing that onto my kid.
Right.
And I like to think I'm one of the more enlightened ones, right? But again, I fall into the trap.
Right.
So.
I mean, it's a self-discovery for people, like, who are you inside? What is your purpose? What are your interests? Like, what are your hobbies? What field do you want to be? Most of the time, we don't allow children to discover those things about themselves because we keep enforcing our ideas. We keep pouring into their brain. So they get to a stage that they don't recognize their own voice, their own intuition, versus like, oh, my mom and dad said I should be this way. And then there's so much confusion as an adult. And ultimately, study shows 75 to 80% of people, adults, are not satisfied in their career.
Oh.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? Because they're not in the right field.
Right.
Because nobody ever helped them to discover what is the right field for them. So we keep pushing them with good intentions that they should do well, be successful, have a financial security. But I had another coaching client. He's 52. He left his job at 52 to follow his dream.
Wow.
I'm glad he did.
Yep.
But when I see that, when people follow their dream, their passion, they're so much happier because it elevates your energy. You're just like, you feel that endless energy that never ends, versus just
Right.
like, it's just in a rat race to just go do a job so you can live in earning.
Yeah, and that's a sure way to be miserable. And when you're miserable, you make everybody around you miserable.
Yes.
Right? We won't get into the energy-sucking vampires that sometimes you run into, but that's what's happening, is they're unhappy with their life, so they make it a point to go and interrupt your life and make you unhappy as well. So.
And one thing very important that I want to communicate, because I see that in the coaching practice, is that when I'm the interventionist between mom and dad and teenagers, and when I ask the mom and dad, it's like, okay, what are your intentions, what you want for your child? Most of the time, whatever they want for their children to do in terms of path for career or anything else is because they have struggled themselves not accomplishing that. Because that energy got blocked inside, they didn't follow their own passion, so they're enforcing that on their kids. They're trying to live through their dreams, and that's a horrible thing to do because they may not have the same dreams as mom and dad.
Yeah.
They may have a different path. If they do, great, but just to make them feel obligated to do it because I think it's the best thing for you is the wrong path for children.
Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, obviously we can go on and on about this topic. It's important to reiterate the point that, you know, let your kids be who they are. Let them be creative. Let them be who they want to be. Ultimately, you don't want them to be you, right? I mean, as much as your ego wants that, you want them to have their own voice, discover who they are. Let them grow into the adults, healthy adults that they can be, versus you trying to make them perfect, striving for perfection. That's only going to later on hinder them in their adult life, because they're fighting within themselves the whole time.
And there's another correlation between a bad behavior child, that they're misbehaving, is because they're not really having their own voice. They're not living their own dream life. So then when they get stressed without even knowing, they get into bad behaviors, because it's a way to release stress.
Right.
And so that happens. And you know, our son, I have such a high amount of respect for him, because I've learned so much from him.
Yeah.
Because I look at him not like I'm the parent and you're the child. I look at him, I respect him from just an individual, because he is a visionary. He's giving me so many ideas about my own business. He's giving me so many great advice. And I don't say, oh, you're a child, you don't know, I know. It's like, oh, let me listen to this, because he's got some intuition that I don't. He's got a perspective that I don't.
Right.
I've had so many breakthroughs because of my son.
Oh yeah, ours has got a lot of wisdom.
He does have a lot of wisdom, you know.
he knows how to use it against his dad too, right? He says, Dad, I'm going to make mistakes. You got to just let me make them, right? I mean, he told me that. I'm like, oh man, you know, so he knows how to do it. Good.
And one thing that I keep putting Steph in his brain in a healthy way is, I always tell him, make the mistakes as long as you can recover from those mistakes. You know, we allow you to make the mistakes because it's part of life, but as long as you can recover. And the most fascinating part is that before he wants to do something, and you're witness to this,
right.
he either comes to both of us and he wants to tell us that, like, I need your advice. I'm about to do something, so help me out.
Right.
Because human beings, we all have the different energies. We're very self-regulators.
Right.
So we don't want to do the wrong things.
Right, exactly.
But when you know you trust somebody, you go to them that you can trust. Then I'm like, sometimes I look at him like, wow, I can't believe he just did that.
I know, and sometimes he gets into trouble and he comes home and he tells us what he did. And then he's more mad at himself because we're not mad. You know, it's like, he just like, it's almost like he wants to self-punish himself for stuff that he knows he didn't do the right thing. It's really, it's fun because I'm kind of secretly just smiling inside and I know what's going on. But it's good because we have an open line of communication. I think ultimately Aris knows that he's not afraid from us, and he can tell us anything and we won't judge or shame him for what, you know, he's done. And he doesn't do much. I mean, it's not like he's out there robbing banks or stuff.
He comes to us and talks about just about anything and everything. And that was my dream, to make sure as parents, because I didn't have that luxury, and I wanted, and you had that, you know, you were able to talk to your grandmother all the time openly just about anything.
Yep.
And you often said that, you know, and there's some parents. She was my
consigliere.
And there's some parents that they think, oh, don't be best friends with your kids. Well, you can have a balance of both, discipline and being best friends, because if you're not friends with them, they're going to open up to somebody else, and they're not trained or to help them. So they're going to give them the wrong advice. So ultimately, you want to be the best person for them to come for advice. But obviously, you need to make sure that you're healthy in terms of your emotional well-being, to make sure that you're not giving them the wrong advice. Or if you feel like you can do it, then ultimately reach out. There's tons of great, you know, coaches that work with kids, and ours had a life coach.
Yeah, he did.
For 6 months. It was great because we wanted him to have a different perspective than just listening to us.
Right. It's important that they get a different perspective.
Remember that time that he felt like he had to take the car out for a drive?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He took the car out.
Tell us that.
Well, he took the car out and he said he did really great, which I believe him, until he hit the other car that was parked on the side of the road. And he comes back and he's all mad at himself. He's like, I did something wrong. I know I wasn't supposed to. And I didn't get mad, you know, and Mary didn't get mad.
Yeah.
And he was like, why aren't you guys mad?
Yeah.
How come you guys aren't punishing me?
Right. And no, the funny part was, so you took it around the corner, right?
Yeah.
And then we were not home. We went to for a day trip, you and I
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Arya. And then he texts you, he goes, Dad, I hit someone's car. And then you're like, I look at your face and it's like, oh, this is what happened. And I was calm. And then we're like, okay, well, it happened. Is everybody okay? You know,
Yeah.
is everybody safe? And it was safe. So we come home and then we go inside the home and he's looking at us like he's so disappointed in himself. We
Yeah.
don't say anything whatsoever. And he takes off his glasses. He
Yeah.
goes, you guys need to hit me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I'm like, we're looking at each other. You and I are like, well, there's no need for us to hit you, but let's talk about what you've done. You know, what could have happened,
Right.
the consequences, and then obviously, you know, that really taught them a great lesson because hey, I don't want to do that because most people want to experience things themselves. So then that's the way you learn, anyways. You don't learn by somebody telling you.
Yeah, you learn by making mistakes, right?
Yeah, because then something happens emotionally in your own head. Something goes, you know, a light bulb goes on, and then you realize that I shouldn't be doing that.
Right.
Because advice doesn't really work unless you trust somebody 100%.
Well, it's something, you know, trust has to be built. So I think we're at a point with ours that he trusts us now, and it's okay. And I think
Right.
you can get with that position with any child. You know,
Yeah.
just give them the opportunity, give them the love, let them know you're there to help guide them, not to tell them at every turn what they need to do, but just give guidance, and ultimately your child will respond in kind to you and will ultimately keep coming back to you and asking you, am I doing the right thing? What should I be doing?
What should I be doing? And I think that's the beauty of creating that they want to be self-regulators, that
Right.
they want to improve, not because you're forcing upon them.
Right.
You know, there's a big difference.
Right.
And we're not perfect people. We're not perfect parents at all
No.
because we get criticized by family members, by everybody
time.
so much. But you know what? It's okay because only time will prove how somebody as an adult going to live their life. And to me, is if someone is happy and they're emotionally well-being at the state that they can function and they can lead a life that is healthy for them, that's what's important for me.
That's
it doesn't
what we're
matter
gonna judge
what
the success by, right?
exactly. It doesn't matter what kind of grade you get today. It's how you kind of a life you're going to lead tomorrow. That's how I judge someone's success as parents.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this show. We look forward to our next show. And until next time, thank you.
All right.
Oh, by the way, please share this message, because if you think you could benefit somebody else, there may be other parents who are watching. There may be other kids who could make their parents watch this. So anytime you share our Facebook post with somebody else, or you share the link for the YouTube or anything like that, we really, really appreciate it. And we certainly appreciate all the comments that you send our way. So thank you very much. And you can reach Mary through her email, which is marys@marynawabi.com, or you can just go to her website, marynawabi.com.
All right.
All right. Until
Okay.
next time. Thank you.
Thank you.